We call it people technology.
Well, that is more like the Mumbai Indians that we've come to know and fear over the last few years. It wasn't the most convincing of effort for a large part of that innings, but the story is that Hardik Pandya and Kyron Pollard have struck some sort of form and at least done what they've done many times before, but not as often this season, certainly not in the UAE leg of this season. They've taken Mumbai Indians home. It's Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 timeout with Carlos Brathwaite, who makes it 2 out of 2, and beats Dasgupta as well. We were expecting this at some point, Deep, so this would give the Mumbai Indians a lot of satisfaction, but it didn't come without its own nerves and some amount of uncertainty as to where this game was heading.
Absolutely. I mean, didn't have the start the kind that MI would have wanted. The middle overs looked a little dodgy as well, to be honest. But then in the end, listen, we've been talking about Hardik Pandya and MI missing Hardik Pandya, and I think this is what it was. I mean, you have someone like Hardik and Pollard together. I think that makes more sense. And today, obviously, both of them got together and finished it off the MI way.
It didn't come without its little bit of luck. Carlos didn't it? Hardik Pandya dropped a couple of times. There were the odd misfields, but I mean, Mumbai take it.
Yeah, you make your own luck. So fortune favors the brave. They thought he had good intent throughout the innings. You could see that earlier. He wanted to get in and he wanted to bide his time and bat a few balls, which he was afforded with chasing a score of 130 odd, close to 140. It was by no means a 160 trap. It wasn't a 160 chase either. So I think it was smart cricket on his part. You're not in the best of form. Use a few balls, get your eye in. We all know what you can do at the back end, and I know that this innings will give him a lot of confidence. So, whilst he had a couple of chances, he can't bat and field, fortunately for him. But he'll be happy, and that will do a lot for the Mumbai dressing room.
Hmm. Would it be fair to say, though, while it is Pollard and Pandya that have taken them over, that Saurabh Tiwari perhaps played the most important innings of this chase, Deep?
Absolutely did, because they lost those early wickets, and in those middle overs, it was looking a little difficult, actually, to be honest, with Bishnoi bowling and Markram bowling as well as he did. So at that point in time, it was very, very important not just to kind of make sure they don't lose wicket, but also make sure that the asking rate do not get out of reach. So I think that innings from Saurabh Tiwari was very, very important. Got those big sixes coming in the right time as well. When it seemed like MI was under pressure, Saurabh Tiwari was under pressure, he would come up with those big sixes.
He doesn't look like the modern day athlete, Carlos. But my word, he's got some ability, doesn't he? Just talent when it comes to hitting big shots.
Yeah, you can't body shame in this current climate, and for someone like him, as you say, he's probably not going to run the most tools, but
Yeah.
what he offers, and I think what good franchises do is look at what the player can bring, and not what they can't. And if you look at what he brings stability to that batting lineup, and especially with how fragile it has been with players in the middle order not being in top form. You have someone who can slot in straight away, play spin well, rotate the strike well, and be like a glue between the top order, who's been doing okay with Rohit and Quinton de Kock, and your lower order and your power players. You don't want Hardik coming in the seventh over. Same thing with Pollard. I wouldn't want to come in seventh over, and then leaving too much at the back end to be done. But with Sarab or even if you lose a few early wickets, you can come in, you can capitalize on the power play, you can rotate through the middle. And today to get 45 off 37, still striking at 120 with minimum fuss. He set the game up perfectly for Hardik Pandya and Kieran Pollard to come in and finish it. So someone like him, you don't look at what you want them to look like or what you want them to bring. You just accept what they can do for your team, and
Yeah.
you embrace it. And he can do wonders for this Mumbai team until everyone gets back into form.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah. With complete respect to Saurabh Tiwari, he hardly gets a game, and whenever he does, DP still seems to put in some sort of contribution. And now you think he's here to stay till the end of the season, however long that lasts.
Seems like that. Seems like that. Listen, as far as potential and talent is concerned, nobody can question Saurabh's talent. I mean,
Hmm.
you can't say potential anymore because he's old enough now. But right from his under 19 days, I mean, there was a reason why all these franchises have picked him. India's picked him as well. He's played a few games
Yes.
for India as well. So there was never a dearth of talent, so to say, with Saurabh Tiwari. It was the other things that made him not be as productive as he should have been based on his talent and a natural talent that he's got. Again, today was a great example. And every time, and as you mentioned rightly, every time that he's got an opportunity, even last season, I mean, Ishan Kishan was absolutely brilliant, but Saurabh Tiwari played a couple of games where he contributed as well. So every time he gets an opportunity, he does contribute. And like you said, I don't think that he's going to lose his place in a hurry this season.
Yeah, looks like he's here to stay now, especially with the change that the Mumbai Indians made and came in at a tough time when Rohit Sharma and Surya Kumar Yadav fell back to back. Now, Deep, earlier in the season on our show, you have mentioned that Surya doesn't look out of form, but he's not among the runs. Sanjay Manjrekar also had the similar sort of view that Ishan Kishan looks, there are degrees of being out of form, and Ishan Kishan looks way
Yes.
more than Surya. But a first ball dark, a good one from Surya from Ravi Bishnoi. And are you worried about Surya Kumar Yadav, the batter?
I'm starting to worry. I know, I mean, first ball duck is not something that you hold against someone. It can happen. Very first ball, good delivery, as you mentioned. But someone like Surya, who is so good against spin, not reading the googly, that is a concern for me. Not that he got out. It's just that he did not pick the googly because one of the strengths of his is the fact that he's so good against spin, and so yeah, I mean that is starting to concern me. Looking at the bigger picture and looking about the World Cup and India's prospect and stuff like that, yes, it's starting to concern now.
I guess it could have been worse if Mumbai Indians didn't end up on the right side of this result, Carlos. But the fact that they have now, does that in some ways just change the way players might feel? Maybe now Surya Kumar Yadav, even though he's not among the runs, maybe a different one next game. Do you think that sort of thing could have happened as a result of this win for a team like Mumbai Indians?
Personally, I don't really castigate a player if he gets a one baller or doesn't get a start. I would come down hard on a player that gets to 10 and gets out or 8 and gets out. If you do get a start, then it's your duty to carry on because when you get into a slump like Surya Kumar Yadav has, Ishan Kishan has, it's so hard to get out of it. And as a team and a teammate, when you're looking around and looking at players that are in form but throwing their hands away at 15 and 17 and 20, then it kind of incenses me a bit because I know when, God forbid, your time comes when you're not scoring any runs, it's going to be a burden on the team. So now that you are scoring runs, try to take the team as far as you possibly can. So for this dismissal alone, it will be heightened because obviously he doesn't have a string of scores behind him. But I wouldn't change too much from last game to this game because he didn't get a score and he got one ball. But for him, I think mentally, he needs to think that he's not out of form because he doesn't have the runs behind him. It seems that he's stroking the ball nicely, seems to be getting into good position still. But if he all of a sudden starts to think, crap, well, the other guy in the middle order that was out of form, perceived out of form, has been dropped and someone has come in and taken his place and got 40 odd, then once he starts overthinking like that, he can think himself out of form. And that's a real thing. If you continue to be positive and think our score is around the corner, you get into better positions, you get into better shapes, you continue to strike the ball nicely, and like Hardik today, you're one drop away from a match-winning performance. So he needs to stay in the game mentally and not start to overthink his situation, which can think himself out of form.
Can I
I
quickly
normally,
add to that?
please.
Sorry, Ronan. Yeah, I think the thing that you mentioned about Mumbai Indians winning this game and winning with Hardik and Pollard contributing should help Surya to kind of take his own time in the next game. Listen, there isn't anyone who can replace Surya in that team, so he will play irrespective of what he does or what he's done so far. But having said that, I think this performance from Hardik and Pollard obviously will give that extra elbow room, so to say, in Surya's mind in terms of taking a little bit more time and settling himself down. I think this should help. And most importantly, when I looked at the MI side and their body language, it seemed like the usual MI body language, which was a lot more confident. So I think this would help.
Now, if you talk about Punjab Kings, I quickly just glanced over to our live commentary page to just see what KL Rahul had to say about today. because there are so many things that you feel about Punjab Kings, the T20 side. So I wanted to know how the captain describes this defeat. And he says, good fight from the bowlers, but we should have got 170. So I guess that's one way, that's one point we can start from. Punjab's batting perhaps just not up to the mark in a big game. And the second thing, interestingly, he says we've just not handled pressure well through the tournament. He's added something more about we don't care about the result and we focus on the process and all that, but let's leave that out. Let's focus on those 2 points that he's mentioned, Carlos. As a T20 side, they look like a team that admittedly doesn't bat well in big games, and B, they don't handle the pressure well, and that's probably going to cost them a playoff spot this season.
But with the bat in big games, if I'm in the dressing room, I look into my senior players, my senior top order players. In big games, normally the teams that come out trump are the ones that have won the top four, which are generally your stroke players and your players that you want to get 60, 70, 80. I'm looking to one of those guys to get me a score and to take me down to the 13th, 14th over. When Punjab Kings play well, Mayank Agarwal and KL Rahul does it, and then they're not ably backed up in the middle. So it is a bit of a conundrum because they either lose early wickets and then don't get a score at all, or they do get a score via Mayank and KL batting deep, and then persons question the tempo, probably going a little harder. So when you assess their season, it's been strange because you either want your top order to go deep, knowing that a Pollard, a Pandya, a Russell will come in and add a quick 20 or 30 and take us to extraordinary score, or you're hoping that if your openers don't get off, that your middle order can get scores between them and take it to a good score. At this point in time, I don't think as though they believe in their batting lineup. I don't think that they believe that they can get to 170 consistently. So I have to ask the question of them, is it a belief question? Because that lack of belief can go from the batting inning straight to the ball as well. Do we believe that we can win? Because, and not just saying it, but actually belief, actually thinking with one run to get in the last over, can we defend it? Because if you start to think, well, we're in another losing position, we'll lose, then ultimately the universe will ensure that your prediction is correct and you will lose.
Yeah, well, the universe worked for you as well, did it, Carlos? It's now 2 out of 2 for your prediction. But anyway, no,
I pushed
seriously.
it to the universe today and 2 to 2, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah. But back to this on a serious note, though, Deep, you think that that is the takeaway now from what looks like another season where it's going to be very hard for the Punjab Kings, especially looking at their remaining fixtures. Batting doesn't just seem to click, whether it's tempo, whether it's personnel, whether it's decisions. Mayank Agarwal's big miss today, but they cocked up a chase a while back. Today they didn't bat well. Bowling's been all right, you think. Mohammad Shami, Arshdeep Singh, Bishnoy, they've done a steady job.
I think, yes, and especially like Arshdeep, I think he's been absolutely brilliant last season and a half. He's been very good as well. Through the innings, whether it's bowling with the new one, bowling. The only thing with the batting, and I think Carlos has got a very, very valid point about that belief part. Because with teams who are used to winning, and I don't, see, you also understand where Punjab Kings come from because of the fact that they've lost so many games that they should have won in the last moment. So you can understand there might be a little, a shot on that belief. But end of the day, when you look at that batting effort and you say, maybe the top order did not have that belief in the middle order or the low middle order to finish off games. Same could be said about the middle order of not believing. So I think end of the day, it's about habit of winning, whether you believe that you can win. And once you do that, I mean, it's a funny thing. I mean, everything happens very, very differently. Your body reacts differently, your mind reacts differently, and more often than not, you're in a position to win games even from situations that you're not supposed to. So I think somewhere down the line, as Carlos mentioned, it boils down to belief, and then you strategize differently. Your tactics are different. Your body positioning as a batter is different. Uh, I mean, it's a funny thing, but I guess everything starts from head.
Now, what can this result do for the Mumbai Indians? Do you still think this is a team with significant questions about it, and you're still wondering whether they're going to go all the way, or is this just the kind of result you need to make them dangerous in their remaining three fixtures. They've got Delhi Capitals up next, tough opposition, then Rajasthan, the Sunrisers. Deep, thoughts? What does this result do for MI?
Well, I'm sure they're going to reflect back on this result and say, you know what, this is the second half of the season, and this is where IPL belongs to Mumbai. I mean, the way they've played last few years, a few seasons. So I think they're going to get a lot of confidence from this victory, and take it forward because I mean, listen, that they're too good a side. They have good enough players there to win games and win tournaments. So I think they're going to reflect back on this and say, you know what, now is our time, and this is when we start.
Carlos?
Yeah, I think this will give them good momentum going into that big showdown with Delhi Capitals. And I'll say if they beat Delhi Capitals, then Mumbai will be the team to watch because Rajasthan not in the best of form. Um, Sunrisers propping up the table at the moment. And if they can win 4 games going into the playoffs, everyone knows the juggernaut that Mumbai is in the second half, as Deep mentioned, and they will be a team that will be feared. So this can potentially be a good momentum shift for Mumbai. But if they lose against Delhi Capitals next game, they may start to wonder what do they need to do to qualify, and then all of a sudden you start to think too far ahead. So if they do win against Delhi Capitals, yeah, beware for Mumbai.
Now, where they stand on the points table, it tells you it's a big winning day for Kolkata as well as Mumbai. KKR in particular beating a team like the Delhi Capitals and Mumbai, who are now joining them on 10 points. It's very likely that both those teams could well end up with 16. If anyone slips up, you think that could very well give the advantage to the other. No team has ever not qualified for the playoffs with 16 points. So it could be in for a fascinating finish. And keep an eye out on net run rate, which KKR have only improved, courtesy, funny enough, of that win against the Mumbai Indians, among other games. Punjab have lost big time today, so too Rajasthan, after giving up 2 points to Sunrisers at the foot of the table. There are quite a few games now that will decide where this table is headed. But we also have news that came in just as this game was reaching its final few overs, and that's a unique thing that the IPL is going to do this year. I wonder if you guys have caught on to it. The last two league stage games, are going to be played concurrently. You two are big football fans. You've seen this happen often in the Premier League. You've seen it in football tournaments. The last day of the group stage, that's when all the teams tend to kick off together to avoid any unfair advantage or whatever it could be. But this time it's just the last two games. So four teams will kick off together. I wonder how Carlos Brathwaite feels about that. It's not something we see often in leagues. Carlos, is it a step in the right direction?
I mean, why not? I think it's too early for me to give a verdict to say I like it or I don't like it. I like the fact that they're stepping out of the box and trying to make it a little more interesting, especially with the two fixtures that they have. It could potentially mean that I think either 2 or 3 out of the 4 teams playing would be in with a chance to qualify. So it'll be nice to keep the integrity of the tournament, where you can find situations if that first game is played. And the last 2 teams know that they're completely out of it because of the first result, that you see a whole host of youngsters or guys on the fringe. This way, you get to see the best 11s for all 4 teams, and no one not knowing the result until close to the end of play. So yeah, it's new, it's niche to cricket, and it'll be nice to see how it actually plays out.
Normally, if the aim is parity, Deep, you'd want the last four fixtures to take off together, wouldn't you? So not in the last two, because that only gives half
Yeah,
the advantage.
yes, but you know what? I mean, if you have 2 games staggered, that brings more drama to the last game. If it actually goes down to the last game, so
Yeah.
there are multiple dimensions to that. I mean, obviously you need net run rate comes into the picture and everything else. Yeah, while I like the idea of having of all these games happening together simultaneously at last day, but if I look at the other way, I mean, so the last game generally has a lot more drama involved, which might not with this new template now.
Yeah, all right. So it's just I just quickly glanced at the fixtures, and that's going to be Sunrisers against Mumbai Indians and RCB against Delhi Capitals. I'd love to watch Mumbai and Kolkata almost sort of go together, because then by chance, if one's slipping, it affects result of the other game. But anyway, it's like football, like that famous season when Sergio Aguero won the title
No,
for Man.
no. I know Carlos is a Man U guy, so don't do this. Don't do
Yeah,
this.
I know.
You stick with
I
your
know.
Arsenal.
That
You
broke my
stick with your
heart. That broke my
Yeah.
heart.
Oh, no, come on, Carlos. I'm just giving a sporting reference, right? That's all I'm doing. Context. It just coincides with something you didn't enjoy. Anyway, it's interesting. We'll see how it goes. It keeps Deep Dasgupta very busy on his last day. You'd think they'll be looking at one game and commentating on the other. But more from you, gentlemen, as this tournament goes on. Carlos, thank you very much. You've earned another day off, a couple of days off after waking up at 5 a.m. for this double header. And this tournament is now entering a very interesting phase. It looks like Mumbai and Kolkata have put a little bit of distance between them and the rest, but things can change very quickly. Bangalore and Rajasthan tomorrow. Join us for Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20. Time out for that.
We call it people technology.